Tonight on the Worldview Report, President Trump wins a major court victory, allowing him to send National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon, from states whose governors oppose those troop movements. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff get sent back to Israel to shore up the president's already faltering Middle East peace deal. Many of the most popular Glock pistol models will no longer be available for commercial purchase by the end of the year. And the EU's top diplomat blasts President Trump's plan to meet with Putin to try and end the war in Ukraine. All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brannon Howse. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brannon Howse.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. I'm Brannon Howse. Leading off tonight, a U.S. appeals court has ruled that the Trump administration can deploy Oregon National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon. Reuters reports that a divided U.S. appeals court ruled on Monday that President Trump can send National Guard troops into Portland, despite objections by the elected leaders of the city and state, giving the Republican president an important legal victory as he dispatches military forces to a growing number of Democrat-led jurisdictions. Three-judge panel of the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, they granted the Justice Department's request to put on hold a judge's order that had blocked the deployment while a legal challenge to Trump's action plans played out. Portland-based U.S. District Judge Karen Immergut, who Trump appointed during his first term as president, ruled on October 4th that Trump likely acted unlawfully when he ordered troops to Portland. One judge dissented, while the other two ruled in favor of President Trump. Judge Immergut had blocked Trump from sending any National Guard troops to Portland, at least until the end of October. And she has scheduled a non-jury trial set to begin on October 29th to determine whether to impose a long-term block. The judges wrote in their decision, quote, "After considering the record at this preliminary stage, we conclude that it is likely that the president lawfully exercised his statutory authority under U.S. law, which authorizes the federalization of the National Guard when the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States," end quote. The Times of Israel reports that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and top White House advisor Jared Kushner landed in Israel on Monday and met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just over a week into the shaky ceasefire deal in Gaza. The leaders discussed, quote, "the developments and updates in the region," end quote. That's what a spokeswoman for the prime minister's office told journalists without providing any further details. She added that U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife, they were due to visit Israel for a few days and will be meeting with the prime minister. The vice president landed in Israel today. This week's visit, well, it marks Witkoff and Kushner's second trip to the country since the Gaza ceasefire deal was signed on October 9th. The pair are slated to again visit Hostages Square in Tel Aviv during their trip, as 16 bodies of fallen captives remain held in Gaza. Their visit, it is part of a concerted U.S. push to keep the fledgling ceasefire from falling apart, day after Israel carried out deadly strikes across the Strip in response to an attack by Palestinian gunmen who killed 2 Israeli soldiers in Rafah. That's on the Israel side of the ceasefire line. Witkoff and Kushner, the architects of the ceasefire hostage deal, they will be joined by Vance on Tuesday, today. And the Israel Airports Authority, they said this as a matter of fact in a statement, and we'll keep you posted on this developing story. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu denied Saturday that U.S. President Donald Trump had strong-armed him into agreeing to the ceasefire and hostage release deal, and stressed that the war in Gaza, quote, will end for good when the terms of the agreement that were accepted are implemented, end quote. He said in an appearance on the staunchly pro-Netanyahu channel, Channel 14, quote, "We are insisting that the agreement be implemented in its entirety," end quote, including the return of all the dead hostages and the disarmament of Hamas. He also confirmed that he would be running again for office in the next elections that are scheduled for October of 2026. And he said he was confident that he would win. Opinion polls, other than those conducted by Channel 14, have consistently predicted that Netanyahu's current bloc of right-wing and religious parties would not win a Knesset majority. But the anti-Netanyahu opposition bloc is just short of a majority in many recent polls, with two Arab parties holding the balance. Again, another story we'll be following. A widespread failure at Amazon Web Services knocked out access to countless online services and websites on Monday, leaving users frustrated and businesses, scrambling. Reports flooded in starting around 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, with platforms like Snapchat, Fortnite, Roblox, and Duolingo grinding to a halt for millions. The disruption extended beyond social media and games, hitting smart home devices such as Ring doorbells and Alexa speakers, as well as banking apps and delivery services. Down Detector logged tens of thousands of complaints, painting a picture of chaos that rippled through, daily routines, from parents unable to monitor their homes to gamers mid-sessions losing connections. Amazon confirmed the issue on its status page, stating, quote, "We are investigating increased error rates and latencies for multiple AWS services in the U.S. East 1 region," end quote. Later updates indicated they had identified a potential root cause, but they offered no details on what sparked the breakdown. This isn't the first time AWS has faltered, but the scale, it raises questions about the dangers of putting so much power in the hands of one company. With Amazon controlling a massive chunk of the cloud infrastructure that indeed underpins the modern economy, a single point of failure can paralyze everything from e-commerce to essential communications as interconnected sites go down like dominoes. Critics, they have long warned that this centralization invites trouble, whether from simple errors or something more sinister. Online forums, they buzzed with speculations as the outage dragged on. Some users, they pointed to recent geopolitical tensions, suggesting a cyber attack by state actors. While officials, they have not confirmed any foul play, the timing coming amid heightened alerts for digital threats, it fuels doubts that it was just a routine glitch. And again, something we'll be monitoring. Two survivors of an American military strike on a suspected drug-carrying vessel in the Caribbean will be sent to Ecuador and Colombia, their home countries. That's what President Trump said on Saturday. The military rescued the pair after striking a submersible vessel on Thursday, in what was at least the sixth such attack since early September. President Trump said in a social media post, quote, "It was my great honor to destroy a very large drug-carrying submarine that was navigating towards the United States on a well-known narco-trafficking transit route. U.S. intelligence confirmed this vessel was loaded up with mostly fentanyl and other illegal narcotics," end quote. The president said 2 people on board were killed, one more than was previously reported. And the 2 who survived, they're being sent to their home countries, as I said, for detention and prosecution. With Trump's confirmation of the death toll, that means U.S. military action against vessels in the region have killed at least 29 people. The president, he has justified the strikes by asserting that the United States is engaged in an armed conflict with drug cartels. He is relying on the same legal construct used by President George W. Bush when he declared war on terrorism after September 11th. Remember those attacks? Of course you do. And that includes the ability to capture and detain combatants and to use lethal force against them anywhere in the world. The repatriation avoids questions for the Trump administration on what the legal status of the two would have been in the U.S. justice system. It may also sidestep some of the legal issues that arose out of the detention of enemy combatants in the global war on terrorism, as well as challenges to the constitutionality of the current operation. The Associated Press noted that legal scholars, they're split on the issue. Some believe that President Trump's use of lethal military force against suspect drug cartels is legit, along with his authorization of covert action inside Venezuela, which could be used to possibly oust President Maduro. Some think it stretches the bounds of international law. So again, critics disagree. On Friday, President Trump, he seemed to confirm reports that Maduro has offered a stake in Venezuela's oil and other mineral wealth in recent months to try to, stave off mounting pressure from the United States. Venezuelan government officials have also floated a plan in which Maduro would eventually leave office. That's according to a former Trump administration official. That plan was also rejected by the White House, according to the Associated Press. CBS News reports that the Supreme Court on Monday said it will decide whether a federal law that prohibits unlawful drug users from having firearms violates the Second Amendment, adding a second high-stakes case involving gun rights to the docket for its current term. The Justice Department is urging the High Court to uphold the prohibition, arguing that there are narrow circumstances in which the government may burden the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Federal Appeals Court ruled that the law is unconstitutional in most cases, and the Trump administration said that decision should be reversed. In agreeing to take up the Justice Department's appeal, the Supreme Court is adding another gun rights dispute to its docket, as I said, this term. It will also decide whether states can prohibit concealed carry permit holders from bringing their handguns onto private property open to the public. The law at issue in the case is the latest long-standing firearm restriction come under legal scrutiny in the years since the Supreme Court ruled in 2022 that the Second Amendment protects the right to carry a firearm in public. In that landmark decision, the High Court, they laid out a new standard for evaluating the constitutionality of gun restrictions, focusing on the nation's history and tradition of firearms regulation. Since then, the Supreme Court has been asked to decide the constitutionality of state bans on assault weapons, as well as federal laws barring felons and people subject to domestic violence restraining orders from having guns. The High Court in 2024 upheld the restriction targeting alleged domestic abusers, but has turned away the other cases. But the legal battles, they've continued to make their way to the Supreme Court, including over a provision of the 1968 Gun Control Act that prohibits a person, quote, who is an unlawful user or addicted to any controlled substance, end quote, from having a gun. And indeed, we'll be tracking this one. We'll be right back after this short break. Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now, and we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview. Welcome back from the break, and thank you for remembering that we are brought to you by you. We are a listener-supported network. We are not funded by USAID, the federal government, the CIA. We are not funded by any foreign government. We are not funded by some big, huge think tank or globalist foundation like George Soros, obviously, right? I think it's pretty clear from what we do here at Worldview Report and at Worldview Tube, we're independent. We're not a controlled network. We're free agents seeking only to put out the truth. And of course, the truth as it is through the lens of a Christian worldview. Now, we are nearing end of the year giving. We have to have a very large November and December for giving. That will determine a lot about our future in 2026. I cannot underestimate how large the giving usually is for November and December relative to the rest of the year. It's a big time when people give. And so please consider making a contribution to the foundation, will you? At worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. And you'll find our phone number where you can leave a voicemail for Melissa, my wife, or text her. She'll get back to you and help you make that contribution over the phone if that's the manner in which you prefer to give. So whether by phone, online, or through the mail, you'll find it all there at worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you. The company that makes one of America's most iconic handguns, Glock, has officially announced it will stop making a long list of popular commercial pistol models, marking one of the largest portfolio shifts in the Austrian-based company's history. The move affects almost all models across Glock generations 3 and 4, including the G17, G19, G22, G30, and many more. It's slated to take effect by the end of November. According to Glock's own statement, quote, in order to focus on the products that will drive future innovation and growth, we are making a strategic decision to reduce our current commercial portfolio. This streamlined approach allows us to concentrate on continuing to deliver the highest quality and most relevant solutions for the market, end quote. Notably, these discontinued models will still be supported with parts and service. Law enforcement channels remain largely unaffected, though some IOP, known as Industry Owner Police programs, may be adjusted. The Truth About Guns, which is a pro-Second Amendment website, notes that one major sub-theme being speculated upon is that the decision to discontinue a massive list of Glock models was spurred by legislative and regulatory pressure surrounding the so-called Glock switch. This is a device that enables automatic fire with certain pistol models. In December of 2024, the National Rifle Association and others, they flagged lawsuits by New Jersey and Minnesota, alleging Glock knowingly sells pistols convertible via small switches. Media commentary suggests that Glock may be anticipating regulatory risk or reputational damage, and thus is cleaning its portfolio ahead of further scrutiny. Some forums explicitly link the discontinuation list with concerns about, quote, models that are easily converted, end quote. While Glock's official statement cited innovation and future growth rather than legal exposure from the controversial switch device, many industry observers see a clear correlation. Regardless of the reasons, The Truth About Guns notes that, quote, Glock's sweeping discontinuation of dozens of pistol models marks a pivotal moment for the brand and the firearms market, end quote. Sweden will start filling up its storage silos with food for the first time since the Cold War, amid fears of a war with Russia. After ending its long-standing policy of military non-alignment and joining NATO in 2024, the Scandinavian country is taking some drastic measures to build strength in the new total defense, end quote. That's what its government announced. And when it also announced plans to invest 45 million euros as part of the 2026 budget to set up the grain reserves. Civil Defense Minister Carl Oskar, he said, quote, we are well aware that the risk of Sweden becoming completely cut off is very low, but the risk of complex supply chains being disrupted with major and unpredictable consequences in the event of war, and conflict is unfortunately more likely, end quote. The first emergency grain stocks will be in the north of Sweden. That's a region that risks being isolated in a conflict. The government noted, quote, northern Sweden's important military strategic location, combined with a low degree of self-sufficiency in grain markets, is urgent to establish physical storage here as soon as possible. The government has therefore brought forward the planning and rolled out of this buildup precisely because there is no time to lose. Today, we are thus adding another day to the record books as we have taken concrete measures and steps to seriously strengthen the resilience of Swedish society, end quote. Well, now it is time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. President Trump, he wants to talk to Russian President Putin. The EU not only doesn't like to see the two men talking, it wants Putin arrested. The EU's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, said Monday that it is, quote, not nice, end quote, that Putin will meet his U.S. counterpart for peace talks in Hungary. Two leaders announced plans to meet in Budapest after they spoke for over 2 hours by phone last Thursday. Speaking to journalists ahead of the EU Foreign Affairs Council in Luxembourg on Monday, Kallas said she would be unhappy to see a, quote, person with an arrest warrant put by the ICC coming to a European country, end quote. The International Criminal Court, or ICC, issued an arrest warrant for Putin in March of 2023 over allegations that children were unlawfully deported from Donbass. Moscow does not recognize the ICC's jurisdiction, but has said that children were evacuated from the war zone for their own safety and to be safely reunited with their families. While Hungary is a signatory to the Rome Statute that governs the ICC's activities, Budapest has guaranteed passage to the Russian president. Speaking to TASS on Monday, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova, she claimed that the, quote, aggressive Western European community, end quote, was seeking to, quote, derail any peaceful aspirations, end quote, through, quote, active subversive actions, end quote. Hungary has been chosen as the host nation since its prime minister, Viktor Orbán, maintains what is known as warm and constructive relations with both the president of Russia and the president of the United States. In a post on Facebook on Saturday, Orbán, he wrote that Hungary, in stark contrast to most other EU member states, has never closed channels of negotiation with Moscow. Orbán is, of course, a breath of fresh air with a voice for peace within an otherwise corrupt European Union. The EU is frothing at the mouth with Russia hatred and will seemingly do anything in its power to undermine President Trump's efforts to broker a peace deal that would end the Russia-Ukraine war. Trump, of course, has to deal with his own neocon warmongers right here at home that, well, stunningly, were appointed to his own cabinet. Others like Senator Lindsey Graham. Trump, he's actually working very hard to get him reelected. So I think it's safe to say that they're not going to back off until President Trump satisfies their need for World War III. Now, how they get him into that, I don't know. That's anyone's guess. So trying to avoid such a, well, devastating war, it would seem to me to be on the hot list of things that both really the right and the left should be thinking about and agreeing upon. Because nobody wants to send their sons and daughters off to fight Russia and Ukraine. Yet, if the war isn't ended, I'm afraid it will eventually arrive at that point. So where is the peace movement when you need it, right? That does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. As always, we do thank you for tuning in and for supporting your broadcast, the Worldview Report, that puts out the truth each and every night as the world's only conservative Christian worldview news broadcast. There's no other broadcast like ours anywhere in the world. Go check it out. 5 nights a week. Here we are. Truth. Unapologetically. through the lens of a Christian worldview. So next time, I'm Brannon Howse. Thanks for watching. Take care.